if you ask me.
time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Bill Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day. So join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
And welcome into Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network on a Friday, the 6th day of July, 2018. Willie P. and the Pro once again here with you as we close out the first week of July here in 2018. Hope you're enjoying yourself as whether you're going out to the beach this weekend, trying to take advantage of a long extended weekend because of the holiday, or if you're like us on your way back home trying to start your R&R, we'll take you through it and get you through the evening. 800-956-7266 is the phone number. You can find us on Twitter at SportsTalkSC and on Periscope at SportsTalkSC as well. A couple of different things to kick around. Maryland has been subpoenaed by the U.S. Supreme Court, or by the FBI rather, and gotten themselves in a little bit of hot water involving the NBA/amateurism scandal that has rocked the NCAA and all that stuff that goes inside that. So we'll kick around some of that. We now have another date on the calendar for South Carolina's basketball season, getting closer and closer to at least trying to digest that. Some baseball to talk about as well. And CBS has named the greatest team in the history of basically every one of its programs that it covers in college football. We'll give you the results for Clemson and South Carolina. The Charlotte Hornets made a couple moves today, Pro. Of course, the one that we knew about that was coming for quite a while was made official. The trade of Dwight Howard to the Brooklyn Nets. They get Timothy Mozgov and a couple of draft picks and some cash back in return. Looks like Howard's going to accept the buyout and sign with the Washington Wizards, but they get Tony Parker in the fold as well to be a backup point guard to Kemba Walker, possibly more of a coach slash advisory role as well.
I would assume that would be it. When I see a guy like Tony Parker, tremendous flair for the point guard position, especially his Houdini moves to the bucket. I can't look at this version of Tony Parker. Let me remember what Tony Parker was. When those guys lose something, I can't.
It's like Joe Namath. It's like Joe Namath to the Rams, or Michael Jordan as a Wizard. Like this is what this will turn into for Tony Parker. It'll be a guy who you've been accustomed to wearing or seeing wear a Spurs uniform, and he will look completely miscast.
17 years as a Spur.
It's a lot.
Once you're a Spur, he's up there with the Iceman, George Gervin, as far as when you think Spurs.
Duncan as well.
Duncan,
Robinson.
Parker, Robinson, those guys, they're forever Spurs. That's why I really am into the small and mid-market teams, because they really have ownership with their fans. When you want to make the money and everybody says, well, you got to go to a media center. Well, somebody better tell the Knicks they better sign some people.
As I said, the Knicks basically are resigned to the fact that they're going to have to play the entire season without Kristaps Porzingis. And they basically have told people that publicly, that basically this next year does not matter for them. Of course, the thing with Parker was the little beef with Kawhi Leonard, which involved Parker basically talking bad about Kawhi Leonard's quad injury, saying that his injury was 100 times worse than Kawhi Leonard's, and he played through it. Basically played 55 games after suffering a ruptured quad tendon during the 16-17 postseason. And Kawhi, of course, looking to possibly leave San Antonio. Maybe that ends up at least trying to mend some of the waters there with Leonard and San Antonio, but still seems like he's trying and angling a way to try and maybe join up with LeBron and or the Rockets or somewhere else possibly.
Yeah, the one thing about Tony Parker, and I feel sad about the situation because it almost brings back some personal experience I had, and this was years ago. And maybe you remember and maybe you don't, but I remember when the Hornets had, and this is the old edition of the Hornets, when they played in that humongous Coliseum of 23,500 on Tyvola Road. But when they had that team put together, and the midget, Muggsy Bogues, I know he doesn't like to be called that, but he was all 5'3", but built like a boxer, tremendous point guard, and a one-man press. people didn't understand that one man's trash is another man's treasure. And because he was so short, when the Hornets put that pressure on you with Alonzo Mourning at the end as a shot blocker, you didn't know where Muggsy was because you couldn't see him.
Mm-hmm.
So you would have guys like D. Brown take a dribble and then their hand is moving. And you say, why is your hand doing this when the ball isn't there? Because Muggsy has run under him and stolen the ball. Muggsy had the knee injury. And I'll never forget going to the preseason press thing they had up in the Rock Hill area when they had their practice facility there. Muggsy was talking okay, but you could see in his face that my quickness is gone. I don't have it. I don't have it anymore. And he looks sad. And of course, with that knee injury, he never was the same because he did not have that lightning quickness he used to make it in the NBA. And that's the way I feel about Tony Parker. He does not have that quickness he used to have. And it'll be interesting to see what his pedestrian game looks like.
The ACC has announced its participants for their media kickoff event, which comes your way on July 18th and 19th. Clemson will go on the 19th with the rest of the ACC Atlantic teams. They're not going to send a quarterback. They're going to send offensive lineman Mitch Hyatt. They're going to send defensive end Cleveland Farrell. Usually you send one from each side of the football. What do you make of the fact that Kelly Bryant is not on that list? That seems odd, doesn't it?
Yes and no, because let's face it, obviously they do not want him in that press area where he's going to get thrown all those brickbat questions about who's going to be the quarterback.
They're taking care of him now. They're taking care of him. I'm not saying that they're wrong to do so, but at the same time, all this is going to do, let me put it this way. It'd be one thing if they sent him, because that's a vote of confidence his way. That's a vote of, hey, we know you're going to be the starting quarterback when we take the field against Furman. That's our statement to you and saying, hey, you know what? Let him talk about this. Let him ask you this. Let him get all those questions out of the way. And you get him out of the way one fell swoop. They don't come in August because they don't. But instead, you send Mitch Hyatt, and guess what Mitch Hyatt's going to be peppered with? Well, who's the starting quarterback? Is it Kelly Bryant? Is it Trevor Lawrence? How does Kelly Bryant look in practice? How does Trevor Lawrence look in practice?
That's what we think about. People can't understand that really the guys who get the glory, the wide receivers, the running backs, the quarterback, they can't do a thing,
of course,
without the guys up front.
Of course.
They get to do all the dirty work.
Of course.
Then Mitch Hyatt asked himself, now I have to do the dirty work off the field too? I got to go to the mic and talk about the quarterback situation?
I will say this. The dirty little secret about our business is that the linemen are the best talkers. Like Mitch Hyatt is a good interview. So I'm not saying that I'm mad about that when I get to go up to Charlotte and see those guys, and Corn will be in Atlanta for SEC Media Days, which, by the way, this is, again, we've talked about this. This is the doldrums, guys. We understand that these are the kind of the 2 weeks that are the last little bit of just the lull around here. But 2 weeks, like after next week, Corn's going to be in Atlanta. I'm going to be in Charlotte. We also have Dabo's media event, golf tournament in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, that is when it all kicks up and starts back up again. So I'm excited for that. But at the same time, again, that is going to be the only thing on people's minds when it comes to Clemson is who is starting at quarterback. And the more and more I think about it, the more and more I'm talking myself into what Phil Steele said on our program earlier this week and what Corn said at the end of spring camp. I think it's going to be the hair. I really do. Because in my mind, I feel like that's the only way they can go now. Because it's like, listen, you've heard this guy be talked up for the entire bit of spring. He can do everything except walk on water and change water into wine.
So it's the same as when the NFL has a hot shot #1 draft choice, but you can see yourself that the old journeyman is playing better than he is, but because he's the hot shot guy, he gets to play.
We're gonna spiral this a little bit more around because I want to get some phone calls going on this. 800-956-7266. Are you turning around to the idea of Trevor Lawrence as a starting quarterback for when Clemson takes the field?
More of your calls are coming up on Sports Talk. Hit us up at 800-956-7266.
You heard the man. Hit us up. We'll push for some calls here on a Friday. Willie P and the Pro. Sports Talk brought to you by Founders Federal Credit Union. Receive double C rewards points on lodging, travel, and dining purchases from May 15th to July 31st when you use your Founders Visa Signature or Platinum Visa credit card. Visit foundersfcu.com/Visa for full details. Look, I'm not saying I fully agree with it, nor am I saying I fully believe it. But the more and more I feel like the way Clemson's acting, I'm coming around to Korn's take here when he says that they are setting up the move. They're setting up the transition of power, if you will, from the incumbent Kelly Bryant to the almighty hair, Trevor Lawrence.
Well, here's the key.
Because they're avoiding it. They're avoiding it so much because I think that they're trying to make the change.
The avoidance is in. Can you give me the reason why the change? For instance, the esoteric reason is this guy is tremendous.
Yes.
He's got a tremendous arm. He's got a tremendous feel for the game. He's poised beyond his years. And there's the key word right there. Remember I told you it's the word years. Why? Because they know they only have him, if he's that good, for 3 years. Mm-hmm. So we better squeeze as much as the 3 years out of him as we can.
They want to maximize every bit of his time there.
So which one adds more weight to the balance scale? The fact that you have him for 3 years or the fact that he's that talented?
800-956-7266. Let's lead off with Joshua, who's calling from Lexington. Joshua, you're on Sports Talk for a Friday. What's happening, sir?
Where's Phil?
Where is Phil? Phil is off on vacation, Joshua.
Well, I'm not going to waste my good material on a backup. I only talk to the starters. I'm going to hang up and listen. Actually, I'm going to hang up and not listen.
Well, so that means you don't talk to yourself.
You know who that is?
Yeah, I know.
It's our good friend. It's our good friend, Reggie Anderson's kid, Joshua. No backup. We're here all the time.
Really? And the key point is, why did you hang up? See, that's ducking and running.
I'm going to say, it's funny how Reggie Anderson has raised his child not only to be a coward, number one, but number two, to be misinformed. The fact that we are a backup. We're a backup. We're on the show every day. And you know what? This is the one other thing, too. While all these other radio stations across the state have people who are taking vacation, guess what? Every day of this year, from January 1st all the way to now, we have had at least 2 Sports Talk employees, regular employees, on our air. And we will have that, at least 2, if not all 3, for the rest of this year. So, pound salt, Reg.
Wow.
That's where I'm at.
Oh, okay.
That's where I'm at. Anyway, point being, back to our discussion about Trevor Lawrence and this Kelly Bryant awkward situation. I just feel like so much of what they're trying to do is really just continue on this path of getting just like you said, the most out of this guy. And the more and more I think about it, the more and more I think they don't care about what happens with Kelly Bryant, which I think is sad because I think Kelly Bryant has earned more respect than that. But I think, again, Dabo's got to look at this from the standpoint of, I got 3 years of Trevor Lawrence. Do I really want to spend one of them where he's splitting time with Kelly? Or do I want to try and see if I can get, if not this year, then next year, or even just this year? Because this year obviously is the big one because of all these guys who came back on the defense. You got Wilkins, you got Bryant, you've got Farrell, you've got Dexter Lawrence. I feel like so much has been just completely culminating to this 2018 year. Not saying that this is a last shot for them, but this is their last best shot, at least with the culmination of all these guys around. Not saying they can't win it in the future. Not saying that 2019 they're going to be crappy because they played in a conference and especially a division where I think they can dominate for a lot of time. But I feel like this has the makings of a You know how we say in the professional ranks, a win now scenario, a win now season. Clemson is built to win now. So I feel like you make a win now move by going to Trevor Lawrence instead of Kelly Bryant.
Yeah, I think probably the other feeling is this. For the fans, the last memory is the most indelible one. And they remember Bryant struggling against Alabama's defense. That night, Trevor Lawrence would have struggled against Alabama's. Alabama had, they had something sticking in their craw, and it wore a tiger paw, and they were ready to hit anything that moved. Even if their offense stunk for most of the game, they were going to somehow win that football game if they had to do it defensively, which it turned out they did. So the case in point is, if you're leaning on a young quarterback because one guy lost one game in the playoff, I mean, you got to go a little bit further than that, because sometimes the anticipation is greater than the actualization of what you want. So it's just something to think about, because I think the one thing I like about Kelly Bryant is this, and that's why I say my hat's off to the coaching staff at Clemson, is he did not go. How many times have we seen a quarterback come into a situation where they replace a legend and they struggle and they don't have an identity of their own? But this guy comes in, Kelly Bryant, and almost from the start, this is the way the offense is going to be done on my watch, because this is the best thing I can do. And sometimes I'm going to throw the ball and look good, but other times I'm going to be the best power running back that we have in the backfield, and you're going to see that side of me too. And he pulled it off till he ran into the Crimson Tide. But a lot of people do that.
Well, here's the other part of this too. They knew they got exposed in that game last year. Like, they got heavily exposed, and the offense was stuck in neutral in that game. Now, they're not going to play anywhere near the team like Alabama was during the regular season. But you know they're on a crash course to see him at some point. If, again,
or somebody
close to that.
Alabama may not.
If everything goes according to Hoyle, they will see somebody of that caliber at some point. But the other part of this is that so much of what they run or what they ran last year was incumbent on the threat of Kelly being able to run the football, because at times last year he was their best running back.
Oh, yeah.
And they struggled to establish the run outside of the occasional big play from Travis Etienne or the scramble runs from Bryant. So maybe this is more of a, with Trevor, because he's not necessarily going to run as much as Kelly, maybe this is an onus on, hey, let's figure out how to best diversify our offense and not be so darn predictable. Because when basically Alabama made Kelly Bryant have to be the one to beat them, they looked awful ordinary. So from that perspective, you get a better quarterback, a more accurate quarterback in Lawrence, and you have a more established running game with, more traditional running game with ETN and Tavian Feaster and guys like that who are coming back motivated off of that loss. Maybe that's a better way to organize Clemson's offense.
Well, if you think about it, first of all, you look at Alabama and who they have to play inside their conference, someone they play every year. What team in the West that people look at but don't think about enough as being Alabama's biggest foil over the last few years? The answer, Ole Miss. Why? Because Ole Miss didn't care about the fear of God and throwing it deep on people. And Alabama will dare you to throw deep. And Ole Miss was the one team that said, oh, you want us to throw deep? Look, we're throwing deep. And if you notice, every time they played Alabama.
And what was the one play that we saw in the spring game? Trevor Lawrence throwing deep down the left sideline to T. Higgins. So who knows?
So the threat of throwing deep is important to weaken Alabama's defense.
We'll talk to somebody who was at one of the biggest recruiting events that came out last week. That comes your way next on Sports Talk. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Our good friend David Hood of TigerNet was in the heart of Texas this past week, spending his, or at least pre-4th of July time in Frisco at the practice facility home of the Dallas Cowboys. The opening is what it's called, of course, the big recruiting event that takes place. It used to take place the Nike headquarters in Portland, but now Jerry Jones has bought another thing and stolen it, so he obviously wants to turn it into something that was Texas big. My only question to you, David, is did you have a steak that was as big as your head when you were in Texas?
No, I stayed mostly with the barbecue and Mexican and Tex-Mex while I was out there. That was kind of my big thing, just to make sure some of the restaurants that I grew up going to, I made sure I went back to.
You didn't bring me back any Whataburger either.
No, and the wife is kind of mad about that too, because she looked at my receipts and she saw that I had Whataburger 3 different times, and that didn't go over well.
That's fun. More to the football. I'm going to ask you about a South Carolina kid first, just because he was there and obviously impressed. What were your thoughts, and what did you see from Ryan Helinski?
Well, first of all, I thought that the quarterback class may be a little bit down from what we've seen in years past, but Ryan Helinski, he was one of the better ones that was out there. I kind of wanted to lay eyes on him, and I got to meet his dad and talk to him for a little bit. Seemed like a really nice family. And, Ryan, I think they might have to work on the throwing motion just a little bit, but I thought he was extremely accurate. His arm was stronger than maybe I thought. And he's always out there talking, shows good leadership capabilities. And, I think South Carolina's got a good one in him.
It's funny. We've been hearing that about the quarterback class, and Clemson's got Tyson Pumachan in the fold for 2019, and Carolina obviously has Helinski. But outside of those two names, you're really not hearing a lot of juice for any other quarterbacks. Why is that? Is it just, like you said, a down year, or what I guess is hampering this quarterback class more than most?
Yeah, I think it's just, like we hear in college football all the time, things are cyclical, and you run through years where you've got a lot of really good quarterbacks, and then maybe the next year you're down a little bit. I think the 2020 class is going to be a lot better, including the kid from California, that DJ Uiagalelei.
Yes.
From Mater Dei out there. I mean, I just think those things are cyclical. Maybe the best quarterback that I saw out there was Spencer Rattler, who's the Oklahoma commit. He might have been the best, but maybe the best. I think he might have been 5th or 6th best last year. That's just the way it goes. And, maybe this year I thought the linebackers were better than they were a year ago. And, I thought I saw a lot of better defensive backs this year. It's just the way it goes.
And of course, because we talked about the quarterbacks that way, watch these guys explode when they come to, because you said we weren't any good. This is what we're going to do. And sometimes psychologically it can affect the guy's play. I talked about guys changing their motion a little bit years ago until I saw Phillip Rivers. I said, if this guy can do this, I'll let him go ahead and do what he wants to do. But you talked about the linebackers and defensive backs, these guys who have to stop these quarterbacks that's been coming in. Who caught your eye as far as the back seven are concerned?
Yeah, there was a kid out of Alabama that I just actually posted a story about, Jaden Hill, who South Carolina is showing a whole lot of love to. I thought he was really good. In fact, I saw him the week before at Dabo's camp, or 2 weeks before. He was really good in coverage. He went up against some of those guys that are you're really fast, really talented. I thought he used his hands really well. His feet were good. He really jumped out to me, and he told me he was waiting on a Clemson offer, and I'm a little bit shocked Clemson hasn't offered him yet, because I think everybody else has. And then I see Deion Sanders tweeting to him and saying, "Hey, guy, you're one of the ones that I'm going to watch. You're an up-and-comer." And then out of the linebackers, there's a kid out of Mississippi named Nakobe Dean, who is just that prototypical middle linebacker. He's really thick. He's got a thick base, but he's decent in coverage. He's explosive. He gets to the ball quick. And, I think he's going to be one of those guys that you look at in about 3 years or 4 years as being one of those top draft picks if he continues to develop.
Yeah, he just recently, Jaden Hill just recently got an Oklahoma offer as well here within the last couple of days. And like you said, he's got offers that span across the globe. We're talking with David Hood of TigerNet. Of course, I have to ask you about who was there from a Clemson perspective. Who among Clemson's targets impressed you while you were there in Frisco?
Frank Ladson, the wide receiver commit out of the Dade area down in Florida. He just continues to blow me away. I've got a story I'm going to run on him a little bit later, but coach who's out of California, who's coached a lot of receivers, he kind of came up to me and he said, this kid's going to be, an NFL first-round draft pick. He's going to play a long time in the league. He's already got that size to him, or that length. He's got to put on some weight, but he was out there just blowing past defensive backs and showed really good hands. If you're going to critique him, then you go, okay, yeah, he's got to put on a little bit of weight. And then I want to see him win some more battles at the line of scrimmage, maybe getting off of, guys trying to jam him at the line. So I thought he was very impressive, one of the best ones out there. And then Clemson had a linebacker commit, Brighton Constantine, who's out of the state of Louisiana, who had won a lot of awards the previous week at the Rivals 5-Star Challenge. He's another one. He never shuts up when he's out on the football field, natural leader. Said he wants to call the plays when he gets to Clemson. He was a lot better in coverage than I thought he would be. I really would love to see some film on him when he's in run support. Can't do that in 7-on-7. He's another one's going to have to put on a little bit of weight, but really liked what I saw.
Because of all the spread offenses now, are we seeing, or could you see from the event you were at, where linebackers, especially on the outside, may be getting slightly smaller because the being valuable in coverage is so important to be on the field as a linebacker now?
Absolutely. I think you started seeing a lot of teams make that change. Even Nick Saban went away from, those big monster 255-pounders in the middle and realizing he's got to cover guys out in space. And so now you're seeing a lot of guys who are out there running around at 215, 220, maybe not as heavy as they have been in the past. And they've got to be able to have coverage skills if they're going to survive. And that's why these 7-on-7s are, kind of a good predictor of what they're going to be able to do out on the collegiate level.
You spent some of your time talking about the center from Alabama, Clay Webb, and something you wrote that I found very interesting. The high school rules in Alabama prohibit him from having pads on at this time of year, so he wasn't able to be really involved with anything. Is that a unique rule, or are there other states that have restrictions on stuff like that?
Yeah, there are a few other days. So he and Pierce Quick is another guy out of Alabama. He's committed to Alabama. They had one defender that they could go up against, and that was it. And they couldn't put on the pads. They could put on the helmet. So it kind of limited what they were able to do in the lineman challenge. They were really able to get physical.
So why even show up? That's my only question.
Well, it's a great experience, and you get out there and you get some pretty good teaching. And, that's what he said he wanted. He wanted to go out there and he wanted to be coached. And I got to spend some time talking to his mother and his grandfather, and they said, when he goes to camps, he doesn't care about the social aspect. He doesn't want to be on social media. He wants to go find the conditioning coaches and find out how to get better. He just wants to spend time with the offensive line coaches and take coaching. If he was a basketball player, you'd call him a gym rat.
Well, David Hood, TigerNet, I guess I'll see you maybe a week from Tuesday at Kiowee and obviously in Charlotte here coming up here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, don't threaten me that way, but yeah, I guess you will.
I have to bring you some bourbon, I understand as well.
You know the deal.
Appreciate the time. That's David Hood of TigerNet joining us here on Sports Talk. He said he would only come on if I promised him alcohol and women. I can only provide him one of those two things because he's of course very happily married and expecting a young child as well.
Oh, okay. Just as long as you don't teach him to make phone calls to talk shows.
See, now there you go. That now you got to bring that call back. That's very good out of you. That's a sleight of hand by the professor. Recruiting is next.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network as we continue here on a Friday. You know, I found this interesting, and I can't remember if I saw this on our feed or somewhere else, but I was looking on, you know, just perusing on the Twitter. Someone mentioned that that they hope Jake Bentley turns into or becomes a big game quarterback this year for South Carolina. And, you know, I almost say that, you know, it's hard for me to judge him off last year because of the injuries that took place, not just on the offensive line, but the Deebo Samuel, et cetera, and so on. We've gone through it. You don't necessarily have to rehash it. But at the same time, you have to wonder, you know, the fact that, once again, there really is no threat of the bench when it comes to Bentley.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Michael Skarnecki is not taking the field for anything other than injury. Jay Urich is not taking the field for anything other than injury. DeCarrion Joyner is certainly not going to take the field for anything other than injury or a special package they might make for him, which could involve a wildcat or something of that nature. I'm wondering if that maybe hurts his motivation at times.
I'm not certain it does. I will say this, though. I would like to ask the question, if a person is talking about it, what is, in his estimation, the definition of a big game quarterback?
Right.
The reason why I say that is if you look at some coaches, there is a reticence to ask the quarterback to be the savior of your football team during a game or a season.
Right.
Does Nick Saban ask his quarterback to win football games?
I mean, he did in the national championship
Yeah,
game.
yeah.
With
But
Tua.
does he normally do that?
No. But he did. But he did with Tua.
Yeah.
Which again was rare.
When you look at the disciple of his, and Kirby Smart, did Kirby actually ask his quarterback to win football games last year?
No, he basically said, hand the football to Nick Chubb and Sony Michel.
Now here's the question for Jake Bentley. In your mind, just looking at his career, Florida withstanding or notwithstanding, does Will Muschamp ask his quarterback to win a football
Will
game?
Muschamp asks his defense to win him football games.
Those three guys have something in common, don't they? They coach defense.
Right.
I think defensive coaches are rare to ask the quarterback to be the superstar of a team.
Right.
Now, if you go to Oklahoma or the old Baylor or whatever, their quarterback was the man.
Right.
You win this game.
Well, do you think that's a detriment to the defensive coaches?
No, I don't, because
South Carolina's defense was good enough to win them the Vanderbilt game, the Tennessee game, Missouri, Arkansas to an extent, although they put up 500 on a team that was basically zombies there. The Florida game, although there was some breakdowns there at the end last year. But again, the games they won were largely credited to where their defense was, not necessarily anything that Bentley did.
Well, the only thing I would say to people is, when you look at a big game quarterback, you almost want to measure him by a quarterback taking a chance and succeeding. You know, a spectacular throw or throwing into coverage and he threads the needle. But defensive coaches, in my mind, especially head coaches, their offense philosophy is predicated on them not putting the football in jeopardy. I don't want my defense put in jeopardy by you doing something crazy like throwing it out of the back of the end zone and getting it picked off, and then we have to line up at the 10-yard line. It's just something I want to say. That's why I ask about what the definition of a big game quarterback is, because sometimes I think we look at some teams and see what the quarterback is asked to do, and you say that guy is not a big game quarterback, when actually for what he's asked to do, he is.
Well, I will say that I've probably been as critical of Jake Bentley as anybody has been. I think he's deserved a lot of it. I don't think he deserves a lot of the criticism. I don't think he deserves much of it, but I do think that he deserves some of it. But I also think that he was thrust into an impossible situation as a freshman. And I think that last year he was asked to lead a team that, again, largely crumbled around him with its offensive line and its number one deep threat receiver, and even Rico Dowdle going down. I think that people even forget about that whole situation because of the fact that just so many other things were breaking down around him. But the fact of the matter is, you ask him to protect the football, you ask him to do all these things. He only had 6 games last year where he threw more touchdowns and had interceptions. So in my mind, that's during the regular season. So half the season, he is letting the football go more than, or either more or equal to the amount of times he's actually gotten his team to score. So in my mind that's a red flag in my mind. Because, again, if you're not asking him to do much and he's still throwing interceptions, he threw 12 interceptions last year. And every one of, I would say that 3/4 of them were on him. There were some times where he threw balls up there and it was, nothing you can do about it, or it was a stress situation. He had to throw the football up. A couple of them late in games where, you had to throw, but at other times, those interceptions were on him.
And sometimes, let's face it, he had about 2 or 3 freshman receivers out there, and they could have been in the wrong position.
Exactly.
And he threw the football. That
guy cuts the wrong way.
Yeah, that's the time when you may have to eat the football at some point at that time. But I think probably, I think because of the trials and tribulations he went through with his number 1 receiver going down and having to play with freshmen at the wideout position, and Rico Dowdle being the most versatile running back he had as far as receiver, picking up blitz and running the football, and the greater value of being a ex-quarterback in high school. And sometimes ex-quarterbacks know things that they can help a quarterback with. And with the offensive line, as you say, crumbling around him, I think he's a better quarterback now because he's gone through that crap, to tell you the truth.
Some recruiting notes. USC defensive back target Jaden Davis, who has a Gamecock offer, plans that he's going to announce his commitment on July 18th. That's his birthday. USC defensive back target J.R. Walker will announce on October the 12th or 13th. He has been favoring NC State over the Gamecocks and UNC. Jaden Hill, USC target we talked about with David, was offered by Oklahoma, as we said. USC quarterback commitment from 2019, Ryan Helinski, was named to the roster of the Army All-America game. And Clemson baseball signee Charles Mack signed his professional contract with the Minnesota Twins. He was a 6th-round selection by Minnesota. He got well over slot value at number 184, signed for $500,000. Nice chunk of change. And Westwood cornerback Cam Smith, hearing a lot from USC still, with Will Muschamp saying he texts he and his mom every day. Of course, he camped at USC last month, was in the opening in Frisco we talked about with Dave, and also the Rivals 5-Star Challenge. He's still weighing some things: USC, Georgia, Tennessee, Wake Forest, Florida State, and Tennessee among his final 5 or 6 there. He plans to announce August the 17th. So,
well, looking at the recruiting right now, you almost would guess. If I didn't know anything about the game of football and you looked at where Muschamp was when he took this job and what he's recruiting now, you would almost take an educated guess that he played defensive back.
Yes.
Because he looks like he wants to run after every top defensive back there is.
Exactly.
Including going to California after Steele.
We'll see if that goes on. He will make his decision tomorrow. But, again, he's still a very heavy Southern Cal lean. Yes. We'll see how that plays itself out tomorrow when he makes his announcement. We'll come back. We'll talk some golf with George Bryan III, who is in West Virginia. We hope the cell phone connects in West Virginia because he's at the Greenbrier Tournament. We'll keep you updated on what's going on there, and also with qualifying for the NASCAR stuff, as the Daytona race is tomorrow evening with Monty Dutton. We'll talk to him in about a half hour's time. Sports Talk continues next.
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
Hour 2 of Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, as we rejoin you here for the final hour of the week with you. 800-956-7266, the phone number for prank calls at all, and everybody else too as well. Email talkback at sportstalksc.com, on Twitter at sportstalksc, as well as on Periscope and on TuneIn Radio. Check out the Point Radio, our affiliate in Columbia, WQCL. They never preempt us. Way for you to follow us when you are listening, not just in your car, but outside of the car if you are traveling elsewhere this upcoming holiday weekend. Let's take a look at the leaderboard at the Greenbrier, the military tribute at the Greenbrier. That's where the PGA Tour is this week. Before we get to birdies and bogeys here with George Bryan III, Kelly Kraft is your leader through 36 holes, 13 under par after shooting 64 and 63 the first 2 days. Webb Simpson tied for second at 12 under par. A lot of local flavor up at the top there. Sam Saunders is at 9 under par, 4 strokes back of the lead. Wesley Bryan at 6 under par is going to make our next guest very, very happy. William McGirt is at 5 under par, as is Phil Mickelson. They are tied for 33rd, excuse me, in a group that also includes Kevin Kisner, who shot 66 today. Russell Henley right on the cut line at -3, as is Scott Brown. Tommy Gainey, Bill Haas, Jonathan Bird look like they're on the outside looking in at the cut line. But now it's time to bring on, from beautiful West Virginia, George Bryan III. I don't know if you've seen Bill Belichick around there. That's one of his favorite courses to play there, GB. How's it going?
Oh, it's going great, and I don't blame him a bit. This is absolutely magnificent. I hadn't played at the Greenbrier yet. I played around it, some of the places. Hey, the golf course is perfect. The community is hospitable. And, hey, but right now I'm out at Glade Springs, which is technically part of that resort, kind of an extension. I'm out playing right now. It's gorgeous. Beautiful.
What can you tell us about Wesley's round today?
Well, he played exactly like he's played all spring. He has full swings in pretty good shape, and his distances are way better. Distance control is he's dialing it in. So his putter's good, and he made it look pretty easy today. And he had a great pairing. He played with B.J. Singh and then Kevin Chappell. And B.J. Singh, at 55 years old, still just absolutely annihilates it. So earlier in the year, he played with Phil Mickelson, and Phil Mickelson's out here too. And these guys are up in age, and they hit it farther than almost everybody. This game's just for everybody. Everybody ought to play golf.
I want to ask you about Mickelson in a moment, but I do want to ask you about the leader, Kelly Kraft, because this is a guy who buddy of mine from college played with him out in California, and he just talks about how much he completely can just annihilate the ball while these long hitters, and you're seeing that kind of in the style of Tiger Woods. You know, these guys grew up watching Tiger hit those 350-yard drives, and that's kind of the new age. But how much are you seeing that kind of take over the game right now?
Everybody hits it hard. Everybody hits it solid. Everybody hits it hard, long, and high. The balls don't curve a lot. And that's just a given out here at this level. And it's kind of neat that what they're doing with the golf courses, they're requiring, a little more creativity and some flighting of the golf ball. But, yeah, Kelly Kraft he not only can pound on his ball, he's got great touch and imagination. And he's a fun guy, too. I like Kelly. And he will not back down. That's a fact.
Well, you had I don't know if you had a chance to see him, George, but they had a sort of a teen sensation on the course in Joaquin Neiman from Chile. And he started off like a house of fire. What happened in the second round, if anything that happened to him? Because it looked like he was leading for a while, and then he dropped to 8 under.
Well, what happened, this golf course, these guys are so good. But the course does have some teeth, and it's harder than it looks. And he probably got, I didn't see it in person, but likely got just on the wrong side of the hole or out of the fairway. And it's a neutralizer. You must be in the fairway and on the correct side of the hole out here. So it's going to be hard for those on TV to see it, but there is considerable elevation, as most people know, here in West Virginia, in the mountains. And this course is in the foothills, but it's still, the greens are very undulated and just a little bit on the wrong side of the hole, and you're basically just laying up. So, but I'm guessing that's what happened.
Sam Saunders continues to be at the top of these leaderboards, and we're starting to see more and more of him. What's working for him?
I watched him last week. He played with Wesley, and he is just striking his ball. He always has been a great player. And if anything goes, if anything gets in the average category, it would be the scoring skills. But he occasionally goes neutral to mile with his putter, but he's putting good. This guy's somebody that it wouldn't surprise me at all if he were to win once or twice, and then just make it a habit. He's that good, and it's in his DNA. Everybody knows that.
I want to ask you about the rumored $10 million winner-take-all match play tournament between Tiger and Phil. Is that something? Do you think that's good for golf, or do you think it's too much of a sideshow?
It's good for Tiger or good for Phil. I don't think it's too good for golf. I mean, heck, just watching play. That's my opinion. Let them just watch him play on TV, and I think they're trying to scratch up some hype for that, and I don't blame them. I don't blame them one bit, but I don't. Hey, put Dustin out there if they want to play for that kind of thing. Get somebody that really is sharp.
Wow, that's harsh. I mean, he looked good at times last week. Did Tiger at his tournament, but like you said, it just seems like the field is not afraid of him anymore.
Well, I mean, there's not one. I don't think there might be a few players that get these kind of players. A player last week sat there and got an autograph afterwards, and personally, I just can't even understand that. But if Tiger and Phil are playing good, but if you want to watch the best golf, you got to watch the Dustin Johnson. You got to watch Rory. Those guys are the ones on the edge. $10 million, watching. Come get your $50 ticket and come watch him play.
George,
I don't blame them for trying to get it, but I don't think much of that.
I guess, George, one last thing. Graham McDowell missing out on the Open qualifier, the British Open qualifier, because the airline lost his clubs. Now, see, I was under the impression, knowing you, that I thought golfers, got on the plane and set their clubs on their lap. They never let them out of their sight. What can he do about that? Would you sue the airline? What would happen?
No, I should say that's the hazards of travel, and I think you should have bought a ticket and put the clubs right by us. I agree with you, Pro. But these guys, they get those clubs shipped in on demand, and they're so talented. Just pick you up a rental set at the golf course and take off. By the time he plays the second 18, they'll have a replacement set in.
I don't know.
That's part of it.
I don't know if you want to rent a set of clubs at Carnoustie, because you might get a bag that says Vandeveld. Who knows? That probably wouldn't be good for you.
Hey, that's good. That tournament is going to be so much fun, and this is my favorite time of the year, man.
Well, George, we'll let you get back to your round. Best of luck to Wesley this weekend, and I'll make sure you hit him hard and not as often.
I appreciate that. Y'all have some fun this weekend. Tee 'em high, but shoot 'em low.
Appreciate it. That's George Bryan III joining us for our weekly edition of Birdies and Bogeys across the state of South Carolina. That's the thing that I swear that would drive me batty, the Graham McDowell thing. Like this is not the first time I've heard that. Like, there's been a couple of those types of things where clubs get lost as a result of the airlines.
Yeah, that would scare me to death. That's why I thought if I'm a golfer, I wouldn't let my clubs out of my sight.
I would pay for a ticket. I'd pay for a ticket that would have them sitting right next to me, or at least carry them on with me and put them in the overhead. We back.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. We're going to talk NASCAR next. Give you an update on what was going on with qualifying for the Daytona Summer Race, which comes your way tomorrow evening in Florida. The Atlanta Braves failed to sign their first draft pick, or at least their opening draft pick, number 9 overall, Carter Stewart, or number 8 overall, rather. I'm sorry. He basically, right at the Friday afternoon deadline, they could not come to an agreement. Apparently, there were some issues involving his wrist, a ligament injury there. They were trying to sign him below the slot value, which was around $5.8 million, and they also were trying to get him to go below slot value so that they can also get Zach Hess, the talented pitcher out of LSU, but they get neither of those guys. Actually, I'm sorry, $4.98 million is the slot value for Stewart. Basically, in order to try and get the pick, as far as trying to get him a pick for next year, compensatory pick, they have to at least offered him 40% of his slot value. They'll get a number 9 overall selection in the 2019 draft as a compensatory choice. Indications are that will be the case, but disappointing they couldn't get 2 big pitchers that could have been big for their future.
That's not to say that once they go around, they can't find some other pitchers, but the Braves have done this for years. They will, and they've hit or miss. They will draft pitchers early unless they get a position player they just cannot pass. Like when they had the chance to draft Chipper Jones, they went ahead and jumped on that. But so now I guess you could say Stewart has a couple of choices. He either goes on to Mississippi State or he goes JUCO, and so he can be eligible for next year's
possibly
draft.
It looks like he's going to go to Mississippi State. He will join also fellow unsigned first rounder JT Ginn, who was taken 30th overall, also unable to be signed by the Dodgers. The other guy who was not signed by Friday afternoon's deadline was shortstop Matt McClain, who was taken 25th overall by the Arizona Diamondbacks. He will end up instead at UCLA. And kind of somewhat similar on this topic, there's a lot of course, camp session situations now where people are talking about basketball from the moving away from the one and done and kind of going to the basketball model. I'm sorry, going to the baseball model. And Jeff Goodman put out some info on the proposal for a July recruiting model from the potential group that's working here. They're looking at July 15th through the 21st or July 22nd through the 28th, an NCAA-sponsored youth development camp which will be developed and organized in collaboration with USA Basketball, the NBA, and the NBA Players Association. And they will have up to 1,200 rising seniors, at the 900 rising juniors, and 300 rising sophomores. Would be about 2,400 kids with 2 regional camps at 4 locations. And this could possibly lead to an avenue that gets a better evaluation process involved for a lot of these kids who think that they are a one and done, but in reality might not be ticketed for NBA level play as of yet.
And let's face it, as we said before, it only takes one team to make somebody believe they're a one and done. I think you know it's sort of Pollyannish to think that they can go to the baseball model because there's some different things involved with minor league being baseball. And,
well, because you don't expect them to be a high impact guy right away.
But I would think that more realistically 2 years is what I would think.
I don't know if you can get the NBA to agree to that, or even the college. I mean, see, that's the other thing. The NBA wants to kind of have its cake and eat it too. They want the players as soon as they can get them, but at the same time, they don't like the, I would say, anti-PR statement that's made by all the one and dones who either end up bottoming out of the G League or sitting on the ends of NBA benches, not making any money beyond their opening contract.
Yeah. Well, the other side of this is, let's face it, in the heyday, and I know it's different now nowadays, but when you had top players go to schools that were making the NCAA tournament or whatever, it's almost like you had a built-in PR firm working for you. So when these guys got to the NBA, people knew them.
Right.
And well, case in point, I guess the most famous 2-year player probably is Magic Johnson, who played 2 years at Michigan State, and of course the rest is history. But I just think for all concerned, if a guy wants to gamble on going right out of high school, and he has a team in the NBA that gambles on him, well, that's their choice. And if they bottom out, you took a gamble and you lost. But for those who take the gamble and know they can make it, well, that's fine. Other than that, the other thing they can do obviously is go overseas.
Well, the one thing that I think needs to at least take place, and this might be something that is probably more of a systemic issue that exists with basketball, is that the AAU folks have way too much of the power and influence, and a lot of that, again, we've seen through the FBI investigation, has come through the monetary influence of the shoe companies. The NBA and the NCAA, I think, have to take, like you said, a more collaborative effort to own the recruiting process, not just at the collegiate level, but at the NBA level, and do it to a point where it is as impenetrable as possible from outside influence, like the Nikes and the Adidases and the Under Armours and things of that nature. Because the one thing that there are two things that need to be fixed: the corruption part of it, which obviously comes from the stuff we talked about with Louisville and Patino and the whole bit, that needs to go away. And there needs to be an ability for the kids who don't get drafted to still be able to go to school. Those are probably the two biggest issues right now with the basketball model as it sits currently.
Yeah, and part of me says that the Pandora's box is open, and it's scary because let's face it, the teams that carry the mail right now, in college basketball,
the Dukes,
I think they're way stuck in the mud.
Oh yeah,
because let's face it, the shoe companies not only have these camps, but they have this influence of dealing with AAU coaches who influence kids to go to the schools that wear their shoes.
Right.
And let's face it, hey, so-and-so, he's a Nike guy. We know where he's going.
Exactly.
So he's going to North Carolina, Duke, or one of the others.
Well, that's the other part of it.
So that's the big thing right there.
I don't think you can get rid of the corruption. Like I don't think you can. But the one thing you can do is, I think, get to a point where, we don't have a situation like Brian Bowen where he can't come back and play if he's not drafted. And that's, I think, the thing that South Carolina fans are looking at and saying that, we proverbially got screwed because of the fact that they took a chance on a kid to try and get a second redemptive opportunity to try and be a part of their program, knowing full in that the risks were there and inherent. But the other part of this is that now that he has withdrawn from the draft, but it was after the date that he couldn't necessarily reapply to be back in school, he now is stuck in a limbo where he's got to go either play overseas or get a G League only contract, which doesn't look like it's going to happen. So from that perspective, he now is faced with the specter of just being basically left alone.
Well, he's obviously his only recourse now, if he doesn't get a G League contract, is he's got to go overseas. But the key point is he put the investment of his time and his energy in by proving to them that he wanted to play college basketball, by entering into college, understand he was a good student. So he worked at his craft as far as being a student is concerned, and still they penalize him. And that's what gets my goat.
NASCAR next with Monty Dutt.
The latest on this weekend's race is around the corner. The full Monty on NASCAR is next. This is Sports Talk.
The NASCAR gentlemen are in Daytona this weekend for the Coke Zero Sugar 400, which comes your way tomorrow. Chase Elliott on the Busch pole for that after Friday's qualifying session. It'll be actually a Hendrick front row complete with both Elliott and teammate Alex Bowman on the front row. It's time to check in with our good friend Monty Dutton, who joins us every week for the full Monty on NASCAR. Monty, I do want to start, though, with last week's race because obviously the fun was really, really exciting at the end there with Kyle Larson and Busch. Korn was talking to me earlier this week saying that it was the best race of the year. Do you believe it was so? And if so, why?
I think so, because it was really a good race throughout. And I think it was really encouraging because the intermediate track so many times a guy gets a big lead near the end. Many times there have been races that have been pretty exciting throughout, but then end up being a downer at the end. So I think there's two things. Race. It was a duel. What I think is really missing from racing is that usually when somebody passes someone, they get by them and then they're gone. And at the end of this race, the two Kyles, Busch and Larson, swapped the lead. They dueled. I really think that that's what's the biggest thing to me that's missing is that. And so it's encouraging to have that kind of race at that kind of track because there's many fans who say, we're tired of these cookie-cutter tracks, these intermediate tracks. Well, the problem is that there's a lot of them, and they're by and large the nicest facilities in the sport. And it's much more economical rather than, bankrupt a bunch of gorgeous tracks. It's better to fix the racing effort. It wasn't always bad.
I guess how do you fix the racing element then, Monty?
Well, you said, people say, well, these cars are so much.
Seems like we're having some trouble getting Monty with us here. We'll try and get him back involved with us here once we get him a chance to call us back. But you had something you wanted to add.
No, I was about to ask Monty, and I think probably that's what Monty is hinting toward, that you'd like to be able to see more of pit strategy involved in getting into racing and have that almost like a chess match, trying to find out who's better at it in order to win a race, especially when a person does not have the best ride, if you think he does not have that best ride during that particular race.
We have Monty back with us here. Monty, we'll let you resume. You were talking about how to fix the racing element of the racing right now with these intermediate tracks.
Well, I thought what I was saying was what's encouraging is the kind of race they had is a sign that maybe they are fixing it. And the second reason it is it was Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s debut in the booth, and I don't think it was any surprise that he was really good. He's a pleasant person who has the ability to relax and talk on TV just like he's talking to in a private conversation. And so he had a great race for his first time in the booth. And I think that's a big boost for racing, particularly leading into a race that's almost sure to be exciting at Daytona tomorrow night.
Well, Monty, you talked about making the racing a little bit more interesting. Is there any possibility or any moves you can suggest where pit strategy is more involved or more conducive to winning as opposed to just having the best ride that day?
I think that part of the problem is that we live in an era where people don't really pay attention to the races. They're reading their Twitter feed. They have so many balls in the air. I really think that racing has always had, there wouldn't be any classics if every race was spine-tingling excitement, just like every football game doesn't go into overtime. I think part of it is that people have gotten a little bit demanding. But the other part of it is what I think is missing, I mentioned earlier, was the absence of back and forth duels at the front of the pack. So, but the fact is, we shouldn't really gripe about times are bad when times are pretty good. They had a great race last week. They're going to have a great race tomorrow night. It won't have anything to do with the rest of the year, just like the Daytona 500 didn't. But it's going to be exciting. And with Earnhardt Jr. in the booth, and I think NBC doing a better job of telecasting it, I think there's a chance for racing to modestly pick up some momentum.
Yeah, Chase Elliott has the pole, as we mentioned earlier. He'll have his teammate Alex Bowman alongside. Brad Keselowski was the fastest Ford, qualifying third. Jimmy Johnson fourth. And Kevin Harvick was the guy who rounded up the top five. And reigning race winner Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is sixth. Who do you think will shine coming tomorrow night? And who do you think, obviously, you know, they race enough at this track. It's not like it's a new type of thing, but who do you think the momentum favors, and who do you think the track favors?
Well, the only Chevrolet victory this year was the first race at Daytona. And it certainly would be a feel-good story if Chase Elliott won his first race in this event. I think that the mates are bound to be more equal because, on the other hand, I don't think qualifying makes that much difference. Somebody who's starting 22nd might win the race. The reason the Chevrolet won the first race, Austin Dillon, was because so many of the top drivers had fallen by the wayside by wrecks near the end. And it was Dillon who wrecked Eric Almirola to win the race. And Darrell Wallace Jr. finished second, and he hasn't really run in the top 15 since then. Restrictor plates are a very democratic element in stock car racing. They make it where there's a chance for a lot of other people. But you still have to favor the people who are particularly adept at it, because the likelihood is that they'll make the right moves. But there's also a good possibility that someone will just be a beneficiary of fate. Two other people get together. There's an opening. He takes off. So, you know, it's a different form of racing. It's a very exciting form of racing, but the door opens for a lot of people.
In your opinion, this night race at Daytona, who are the drivers you think right now are relishing this moment? Can't wait to get on that track tomorrow night.
People who haven't won. I think there's, you know, 3 drivers have won 14 of the 16 races. There's a lot of people who are really hungry. One of them, I think that Brad Keselowski is both a really good driver, a hungry driver, and an excellent driver on plate races. So I think he has high hopes. But this opens the door for a lot of people. And so, but particularly in this year, the downside of the race at Daytona is that people say it's the summertime race at Daytona. To me, it's more like the rainy time racing at Daytona. When I first started covering the race at racing, this race was running at 11 o'clock in the morning, which is probably, from a weather point of view, the best time, because just like if it was held at Myrtle Beach, every day in this time of year, it seems like it does one of two things. Either it rains or it looks like it's going to rain. So I think that's the biggest problem, that the thing might be drug out and not over till 1 in the morning.
Less than a minute, Monty. Who you got for a winner?
I've been going over about this. I'm going to end up picking somebody that I've wasted a lot of picks on. Kyle Larson, whom I really like, whom I think is the superstar of the future. I've wasted a lot of time picking Chase Elliott, and I've wasted a lot of time picking Brad Keselowski. Well, I'm going to pick Brad Keselowski, so I'll waste another week.
Monty Dutton, always. Our time with you is never wasted. We'll put it that way. Thank you so much for the time. Thanks so much for the time, Monty. We appreciate it. And that's Monty Dutton. Like Monty had Monty put in a very, very nice democratic pick, to use his word.
He was right about that rain, though. This is crazy for me to have races at night in Florida.
A couple of news and notes to close up shop with when we come back here on Sports Talk.
The guys are always checking email. Send your comments or questions to talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, more of Sports Talk from Columbia's Main Street.
So around this time yesterday, Pro brings up during the break, I was saying the Nationals couldn't get blown out by enough for my taste buds right now. They were thinking at this point of the show they were down somewhere in the like 7-0, and then it actually got up to 9-0, and then what happens? The friggin' Nationals score 14 unanswered runs and win 14-12.
Mm-hmm.
Just to screw with me.
Yep.
Just because that's just the way things work in my life. It's okay though. It is what it is. And not even that I care, but it's just like, I said I jinxed it. I jinxed it when I didn't even care. So this is the power. This is the power I have. And again, it's maybe it'll extend to South Carolina and Clemson season. I'm already prepared for the first time South Carolina loses at a game that I'm at, for people to say, "Oh well, Pelagic was there. That's why they lost." No, it's not. It's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. Plus, I'm not going to be at the Georgia game. Who said that? Who said that? It's Corn's game.
You were there in the building. You were in the building. Your aura was there.
So South Carolina basketball. Remember last year we were talking about how I'm not going to use the word soft because Frank hated when people use the word soft. But when how lowly ranked the schedule was and schedule strength during the non-conference season.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not going to be the case this year. Because, again, looking at their strength of schedule, they might have to play Michigan twice. They're going to have to play Virginia. Clemson is a tournament team from a year ago. Oklahoma State should have been in the tournament. Providence out of the Big East is no slouch. And, oh, by the way, they're playing in a conference that had as many teams as they've ever had in there going in last year. So, from that perspective, there's going to be a lot. And there's going to be some reckoning to be taken care of there when it comes to that.
It's sort of difficult because we talk about teams, and I can remember a few years ago when South Carolina had what looked like a good schedule, but then a lot of teams started losing players, leaving early, and that sort of thing. And then as the season went on, that schedule got a little bit lukewarm. Obviously, we have to look at what happens when you see Alabama without a Colin Sexton, Wagner gone from Michigan, their versatile big man. So there's still some adjustments to be made on these teams, how they look, not only on paper, but what they look like once they hit the floor. But I think probably any basketball coach will tell you, when I hit close to the conference basketball season, that's when I'll know if my team is ready to do some damage.
They play Stony Brook November 9th, Norfolk State November 13th, Providence on the 16th at Mohegan Sun, and then either Michigan or George Washington on the 18th, depending on how they go in that tournament. We now know that they'll play on December the 5th against Wyoming, and also the return matchup against Michigan in Ann Arbor on December the 8th. Virginia home December 19th. Clemson's game is around Christmas on the 22nd. That is at Colonial Life this year after Clemson got the victory over South Carolina last year at Littlejohn. And then the Oklahoma State game, part of the SEC Big 12 Challenge, January 26th. They also have Coastal Carolina on the schedule, but have yet to announce a date for that.
And, of course, South Carolina plays one of their road games. In understandably, in basketball, you don't have this often. But when the elements may take precedent here, that is going into Wyoming and playing at altitude.
Yes, that's going to be that's a tough little stretch there. After Mohegan Sun, and I'm guessing the Coastal Carolina game, if I had to place it, I'm guessing it's probably going to be that week after Thanksgiving, I would say. I would say, again, I'm just using an educated guess element here because I do not think they're going to put it finals week there in between Michigan and Virginia. I think they would rather have it at the end of November, but I'm sure Cliff Ellis and Frank are still trying to find out the most suitable date to play that contest. But in my mind, that stretch after Mohegan Sun, they'd be home around Coastal Carolina around that time. If that's the way it goes out, then they have to go to Michigan, a team that they might have already played that year. And they have before that the Wyoming trip. That's a tough 3 or 4 days. And then, oh, by the way, you have to come back and play Tony Bennett's Virginia Cavaliers at home on the 19th.
Yeah, that will.
That's not and a game too where you might not have the student attendance there because of the fact that it's on break.
But I think the big key to this team is if you know the way that Frank likes to coach, the way he likes to play, they won't have as much experience, but he'll have the length that he wants out on the wing.
He'll have length. And I think the other thing, too, I think this group will have more able bodies, if that makes sense. Just because of the fact that there won't be placeholders.
Right.
Like there won't be, and I hate always picking on these two guys, but there won't be guys like Kadeem Gay and E.B. Doumbia.
Yeah, you can't pick on those guys.
I pick on those guys probably more. Well, because they didn't see the floor.
Yeah.
Because Frank knew he couldn't play them.
Because sort of like they were some of
That's why they're no longer here.
Yeah, some of those big men who take longer to develop.
Projects.
Yeah. And
the fact that Jason, and again, I hate to even sound like I'm insulting Jason Cudd, but the fact that Jason Cudd was ahead of his development and was ahead of Gay and Doumbia it speaks to the detriment that is of those two players and why they're not here anymore.
Well, yeah, and they'll get their time to shine later on because they may look highly different in 2 or 3 years than we saw them then, because big men do develop slow. But getting back to that, and also I think the key point of this team is because of the numbers and the length we talked about. I think some of the practices are going to be hell on earth.
Oh yes,
and I think because of that,
I think Frank,
that team will be better in the long run because of those practices.
Frank, I think has really instituted that mindset now, and I think, like you said, the guys who are coming back know what the expectations are, and they're going to let the people who are new know pretty quick. CBS Sports did an interesting exercise with its college football coverage. They went back to basically name the greatest team in each college football team's history. They went through Clemson's history and went all the way back to 2016, They believe the national championship team that Deshaun Watson led the Tigers to the championship was the greatest team in the history. Of course, the 81 national championship team was one that obviously was the other contender there majorly there. Chuck Reedy, I'm sure, would beg to differ on that selection by CBS. But the one they had for South Carolina was interesting. The 2012 team, 2 years after winning the SEC East title, they did it again nearly in 2012, but lost out there. But the group that had Jadeveon Clowney, Connor Shaw, Marcus Lattimore, DJ Swearinger, they, of course, got themselves that very, very interesting but heartbreaking loss. Won the Outback Bowl in Michigan and, basically had the second 11-win season in program history and did that under Steve Spurrier. And, of course, again, Clowney, Swearinger, the whole bit. That 2012 team they called the best team in South Carolina history. Do you balk with that?
Only because I think it's not the team, and I'm just talking about on paper, was not the team that finished ranked 4th in the country.
No.
Which I thought probably was the best team. Remember, they're the only team that year to beat what turned out to be a pretty good Central Florida team.
Right.
And beat them in Orlando.
Right.
They also lost on a freak play, in my opinion, by Tennessee when the guy caught the pass next to his helmet, and Tennessee kicked the winning field goal.
Yes.
They win the East if that doesn't happen.
Hope you had a good week. Hope you enjoyed being with us. We'll come back next week, do it all again, wrap it all up, continue on our summer jaunt together here on Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. Have a good weekend.